Friends, we're talking about the portion of Emor. We are on the 31st gift, and today we're talking about time. The Heschel, in his book, The Sabbath, he says that Judaism is a religion of time. In the Bible, Judaism is obsessed with time, especially in the 5 books of Moses, more than it's obsessed with the space and the earth. As he says, Judaism is a religion of time. And he brings a proof to that. And he says, what is the first object that God sanctifies, as we said in the last week? Was it a mountain? I quote. Was it a temple? Was it an altar? When was the first time that in Tanakh, in the 5 books of Moses, did the word holy appear? Obviously, in the time that God sanctifies the 7th day. In the whole creation, there is no mention of any object that it has holiness. In the Bible, holiness is about time. Time comes before everything. And as Heschel already said, the Yahudut, Judaism, already defined time and it redefined time, because it's very obsessive with time. Today we're going to go on a journey with 3 individuals that we're going to quote and understand why Judaism made the most radical change in how we perceive time. We'll start with Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, and he obviously wrote extensively about the concept of time. And he understands, and he says that the moment of the biggest revolution in terms of time was in the Exodus of Egypt. Until the Exodus of Egypt, the world was a circular world. Time was a circular pattern. You had to obey the gods, and the gods had to adhere to the celestial spheres, the moon, the sun, the stars, and the revolving of the earth around the sun. They didn't know it then, but the revolving of the celestial spheres created a time-bound reality. What was is going to be. And the history repeats itself all the time. And they lived in a circular notion of time. There was no future, there was no past. Whatever happened is going to happen again. And therefore it all connected, the dots connected. Comes Judaism and says to Abraham, you know, there is going to be a future. Your sons are going to go down to Egypt for 400 years and they're going to be rescued from there. A radical change. Why is that a radical change? Let's explain. In Egypt, each force was represented by a god. And therefore, when Moses came and told Pharaoh, let my people go, and God brings the plagues, and Pharaoh at first thinks that each plague represents another god, and therefore he says the gods are fighting between them, and therefore let me win all the gods, and he sees that he does not win. God comes and puts water and fire together in the plague of hail. And he is also the entity that makes all the plagues come into fruition. And Pharaoh is confused. How can it be that all the plagues are there? And Moses explained to him, and this is the understanding of Rabbi Sacks. And he says, listen, God is no longer the God of nature. God is turning to be the God of history. And that's what he started with Abraham, telling him, your children are going to go down to Egypt for 400 years. And with that understanding that God transformed himself from nature to history, Pharaoh understands that he does not belong to any nation. He is not subdued to any season in the calendar. He's not the God of the sun or the moon. He's not the God of autumn or winter or summer or spring. He's above all that. And therefore he's above nature. And with that, God is freed. He's liberated, and God chooses. And he has freedom of choice. And because we have freedom of choice, because we were created in the image of God, we are free. And as Rabbi Sacks says, in the Exodus of Egypt, we are transformed to a different time, not a beast that is structured by nature and the seasons of the year, but an entity that can envision the future with freedom of choice that is above nature. There is beginning and there is end. Before that, the dots were connected and the world revolved around, and whatever was is going to be again and again. And when God placed himself on top of nature as the God of history, the concept of time changed. For the rest of humanity, they took this celestial time, this circle, and they opened it up and made a linear line that starts and still is not finished. And here's another understanding. All the rest of the nations, the golden era came. Rome, Greece, Judaism's golden era, as Sachs says, did not reach our shores yet. All the sages and all the prophets are saying, in the times of the Messiah, this is what's going to be. So our golden era did not arrive yet. And with that, we know where the world is starting, and we still did not reach the end. This is a fundamental change in the concept of time. The second fundamental change in the concept of time started with the revelation on Mount Sinai. And in this week's portion, we see it. Speak to the people of Israel. These are the moments or the holidays that you shall sanctify. And our portion is describing all the holidays of the Jews, Sukkot, Passover, the Day of Atonement, etc. And the interesting thing about the description is that it's a dual one. All the holidays are described in two ways. One, that we have to go by the season, the agricultural seasons, by the way that the earth revolves around the sun, hence spring, autumn, etc. And the other verses that describe the holidays describe it as something that we have to sanctify. We look at the moon, we see that it's starting, the sliver of the moon. We sanctify the moon, not the moon, but the time, and we start our month. We have to combine the sun and the moon. We take something that is natural, that is in space, and we combine it with our work, our sanctifying the time. And we mend the time, we fix the time, we play with the time. Time is something that is not a continuum, but we have an input into it. That's the greatest gift of Judaism. We're not just on the line of time, but we can also create special moments there and sanctify it and give it a meaning. And therefore 365 days of the sun, 354 days of the moon, we have a gap of 11, we create leap years, etc., etc. The involvement of man within time's second gift. Third gift, and this putting on our thinking cap is a little bit heavy. We understand from the Kabbalists that we have a continuous of time, a fabric of time. But the Kabbalists say that within that fabric of time there are peaks. Peaks that are geared towards moment of happiness, liberation, and other tributes or attributes. So for example, in that fabric of time, God created a certain highs and lows, and certain times within that fabric are geared, for example, towards liberation. And that is the month of Nisan, the 7th month as it appears in the Bible. So here, follow me, here is the catch. God released the people from their bondage in the 7th month, in the month of Nisan, not because it was time or that we commemorate the fact that they left, and that's why it became the month of liberation. The opposite here, follow me. Because that month, within the fabric of time, of revolving around the sun, and the moon revolving around the earth, in that fabric of time of the whole universe, there is a peak where it's a time to be liberated. And because that time arrived in the 7th month, God says, what is more appropriate than to release them now, because it's an exit, it's a door within the fabric of time that you can be liberated. That's a deep understanding. And that's the third gift within time that Judaism brings. Peaks within the fabric of time that can be geared. Today people call it the horoscope, they can call it other concepts that affect the human being. Judaism believes in those exit doors that can lead to certain auspicious occasions of happiness and sometimes downfalls within the fabric of time. That's a great change that Judaism brought from this celestial circle of time. It broke it down. It combined man and let him sanctify the time and have involvement, and also told us that there's exit points and highs and lows within the fabric of time. So this is how Judaism gave us the greatest gift. Redefining time, a great revolution that started in the Exodus of Egypt carries on until the era in the future. We don't know when the Messiah is going to come. In the end of time, that's where our golden era is going to be.